on Italy at the macro level and its major trading partners, which include Germany, Spain, France, and the United States and Canada. So we're going to look at those, and we're going to look at the idea of, suppose you were an investor. What would you do with the kind of situation in this world that we're looking at, that Dominick just showed us? If this world starts materializing, where do you put your money? That is the question, you see. I'd like to change the slide.
Yeah, on the left.
On the left? Oh, sorry. No, that doesn't work. Here we go. So we're going to, Dominick gave us a very nice global macroeconomic scenario. Now we're going to condense that scenario down to those few countries, okay? So it's very clear that inflation is the number one concern worldwide. It's very, very, it's the most important variable in the economy, and from a political point of view, it's the most important political variable today. The central banks in all the countries realize this, and they know they're going to have to act on this. Because high inflation hurts households, especially the bottom 60%. And if you're living in a democracy, that's where the voting power comes, and you're not going to let something like that get out of hand. Right? So why does the world have inflation at this time? Dominick already showed us these points. Sacrifices during the pandemic have led to pent-up demand and supply chain backlogs. And two, energy shortages due to the war in Ukraine, compounded by attempts to transition to non-fossil sources of energy. So these two things working together put us in a situation where suddenly the inflation is just taking off. Of course, it was predictable. So what do central banks do to fight inflation? And this is something that the great monetarist, economist, and Nobel Prize winner Milton Friedman called the bitter pill. The bitter pill. And the bitter pill is to raise the interest rate. And we all know what happens. When we raise the interest rate, investors, rather than put their money into speculative things, move into the higher, safer investments as the interest rate goes up. But there is a risk, okay? If you keep raising the interest rates, you might risk having a complete collapse of the economy. You might stop the inflation, but also you generate a lot of unemployment and a lot of distraction. Now, we're going to look at these. We're going to look at Italy and its major partners from data that we took from the United Nations. This is what we call the National Accounts Expenditure data. Okay? And what these data represent, let me see if I can put up, yeah, this is good. Y part is GDP. Now this is what we measure when we talk about the growth of the economy. How has GDP changed? Oops. Right. Here we are. The C part represents household spending, what households spend out of that GDP. The G is what the government is spending. The I is what the private sector is investing in. X is exports, and M is imports. Now, all we have to do is look down the Y column here in the case of Italy, and we notice that here we had an increase, we had an increase here, and then we have a decrease. Then an increase, an increase, an increase, and now it's starting to decrease. A slight increase between 2007 and 2008, but then a big decrease in 2009. And it's always fighting to get back up. But then there's a long trend where the decreases become very, very pronounced, and it still fights to get up. Over the whole period, there were more decreases than increases. So you think of this as a no-growth scenario. Now, what that really means for the average Italian is that their standard of living is stagnant. That doesn't mean that some people don't live well. Most Italians do live well. The biggest surprise for an American is to go to Italy and see how well they do live, especially when they go to the restaurants and everything else. But that decline is not what people want, because you want your GDP to grow as fast as the population is growing. If your population is growing at 2%, you want your GDP to grow about a little bit more than 2%. So the income per capita is continually increasing, the living standards are increasing. But there's a bright spot in the Italian economy. If you look at exports minus imports, the exports always exceed the imports. Now that is fabulous. That's a wonderful thing. Because what it means, though, if they have a debt, the debt doesn't go to foreigners. Their debt goes to their own citizens. When you look at, we'll see this in the United States, if you look at the United States, huge debt, which means the United States owes foreigners a lot of money. And this is very tough, see. The European Union made it a point to stress having a surplus of exports over imports. France just about breaks even, it's a little bit on the negative side. Italy has a nice solid surplus. So does Spain, and so does Germany. Now, those are the three big economies, the four big economies in the European Union. Because of this surplus, it kept the euro very strong for a very long time. So this is something to think about. If they can manage exports over imports continually, as they have in the past, and I don't doubt that they're going to do it in the future, that means that the government, in spite of all the complaints about the bureaucracy and all that stuff, they know what's really important. I'm sure that the Italian exporting firms are getting strong support through the Italian ministries, the economic ministries. All right, so let's take a look now at a little more detail. Oops, go back one. Here we are. We'll look at Germany first. Germany, between 2000 and 2020, had a growth rate of 1.23%. This next parameter that we add over here, this I over Y, this is the ratio of investment into GDP. And you'll notice that that amount remains pretty constant for all countries. It's somewhere in the low 20s, including Italy. See? But if that investment, in the case of Germany, the investment is producing a positive growth rate. So we say this incremental capital output ratio, which is a measure of efficiency of the investment in producing GDP, shows up over here. Oops. Sorry. Okay. The lower that is, the incremental capital output ratio, the more efficient the country is in using investment. This is, if we look at Spain, it grew a little, 102, over the longer period, but it had, with the same, more or less the same ratio of investment to GDP. So we might say, well, Spain is not as efficient and using investment to generate GDP as Germany. We go down to Canada, they did better. They're almost at 1.8%. The USA was 1.8%. And you notice the I-core on the USA is low, it's 11.6. So that would make you think, so why, if you're an American, why would you want to take your money out of the United States, where it's generating a better return on GDP, and move to some other place? So we'll look at that question. But one thing to look at is the period between 2009. 2009 was the ending year of the recession that we had in 2008. And you'll see that it's negative for all countries. In 2009, Italy and Germany suffered the most in terms of decline. Now, what happened in 2009? We had the same situation that we have now, only in a different way. We had an inflation in the housing sector. And we had an inexperienced chairman of the Federal Reserve, Mr. Bernanke from Princeton, who was an expert on, he wrote his dissertation, and he was an expert on what happened in the world during the Depression. So we thought that, well, no, he's the right man for the job. And what he did, he kept increasing the interest rate. See? And boom, he hit that spot which causes a big recession. We are in that danger right now. Last week, the Fed announced that there's a 50-50 chance that we're going to have a recession next year. Now, if they announced it, 50-50, I'll bet it's more like 75-25. But they are committed to stop this inflation. They want to stop it. They want to use the bitter pill, and they realize that they may have to have a recession to stop it. So now, if you're a private investor, you say, oh, now this is a different story. You see, if I take my money and I put it into the stock market, it can take a beating. I remember in 2008, when the stock market took a beating, my colleague, sharing the office at Fordham, he had to retire that year. When he retired, his pension fell to nothing because it was all tied up in the stock market. See? So this is one of the things that you have to really think about. What happens if your investment during recessions, all right? So we like to look at investment into two types. The two types. First is what we call portfolio investment. And this is the investment that most people who work on Wall Street think of, financial people. That's investment into stocks and all the different kinds of products that they have on Wall Street, portfolios of stocks and things like that. So if you're in that, if you have everything tied up in that, and you have a bad year, you take a beating. The other kind of investment is what we call direct investment. Now, direct investment is different. It's where you invest in something you have a knowledge of the business. If you go into portfolio investment, you don't have any opportunity to make any kind of managerial decisions in the firms that you invest in. That's taken out of your hands. You rely upon someone else to manage those firms. But if you make direct investment, let's suppose you, say, invest in an apartment house. You become the manager of that apartment house. And you have to have some knowledge about the apartments and the rental situation. But you wouldn't do it unless you had that kind of knowledge. If you have some knowledge about the kind of businesses that you're going to invest in, that's very important because you'll know what's going on. And not only that, if you invest in the business For example, you might invest in bricks and mortar, or you might buy a business or merge with another business. You take part in the management. You have some control over your investment. You see, that makes it completely different. If you have expertise in making shoes, and you go to Italy and say, okay, I'm going to open a new shoe factory, you know what you're doing. If you were to take the same money and you go into the stock market in the United States or Canada, you don't know. You lose control of it. So what we're saying is, look, even if the economy is really bad, if we have recession or inflation, whatever, if you're going abroad, you're better off investing in something where you have knowledge of the business. And in the long term, direct investment can withstand ups and downs. If you know your business, even when things are really down, you can manage it better through that. And usually direct investment, the payoff, the return on investment comes later on. It's not from one day to the next, like portfolio investment. It's something long term, and it's in an area where you know how to manage yourself. Now, this is a table that economists like to look at. This is the value added by sector. The value added means the contribution to GDP by major sector of the economy, okay? And this is for Italy. And you see that agriculture in Italy is less than 3% of the total GDP of Italy. It's not a big thing, right? Mining, manufacturing, and utilities together all add up to only about 20% of what Italy produces. If you take manufacturing out separately by itself, it's only about 16%. Construction, somewhere around 5%. Now comes the big one. Wholesale retail trade, that's about 15%. Transportation and communication, about 9%. And the other activities really are service activities. These are, and the service activities are always the greatest part of any country's GDP. In the United States, the service activities are about 80%. And now these, we give you a sample of the firms that are in the Venice area. And I picked, there's probably about 2,000 or 3,000 firms in the Venice area that are very productive. But I picked some of the larger ones that you might recognize. You have Amazon, for example. You have that's Price Waterhouse, okay. Deloitte. That's another accounting firm, KPMG. Then you have McDonald's. Ernst & Young, accounting firm. Then you have Liddy, the grocery store chain. Accenture, it's a management consulting firm. Manpower, which is a human resource counseling. Electrolux, which is a Swedish firm. IKEA, which is also a furniture firm. So there's a list here, we can go through them. But these are some big firms, international firms, that moved into the Venice area. And they did for good reason, because they knew their business, and they knew that if they moved to that area, they could manage that business. Okay. Now I want to turn it over to my co-author here, and he'll enlighten you a little bit about the Venice area. But I have one last word to say. If you're thinking about investing in Italy, maybe in Venice, take a trip. Stay for 3 or 4 weeks. Look around. You'll love the food. And it's a beautiful place to visit. Okay? Okay. I think we'll exchange.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Fred. Yes, it's important to come to Veneto and to look around.
I have to give you this
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. I have to
Thank,
give you this stuff.
thank you. Well, I will speak about the Veneto region and the internationalization. Internationalization is a very asset of our region, and the main contribution to the global and Veneto region growth of GDP. We will divide the presentation in four main parts. The basic macroeconomic data. Then first the proposition. We want to verify if the efficiency of investments in Veneto region is higher than the one in Italy. And the second proposition is to understand if internationalization is a good asset to face black swan, green swan, gray rhino, or in other words, events that are improbable, unpredictable, and far-reaching, so like pandemic, for example. And then we speak about our principal aim to develop a sustainable and digital internationalization, a new way, as told before also Dominick in your talk. Some data macroeconomic. Veneto region has a population of about 5 million of inhabitants, and the global GDP is 160 billion euro. 33,000 euro is the GDP per capita, 20% more than the level of Italy. Export is 70 billion euro, 13% of the total export of Italy. Unemployment is close to the full employment because the unemployment rate is 5.8%. Italy is 9.2%, so it's half of the value of Italy. The entrepreneurial system, 430,000 enterprises, 8.3% of Italy. And 90% of this system is made by SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprise. So we can see effectively the industrial organization based on the SMEs. Employees are 1.8 million people. This is Veneto region in 2021. In 2022, the expectation on growth is 4.0 for Veneto region, compared to 4.0 Italy, same rate, but 5.2 USA and China, that is the leader, 5.6. The world is 4.9%, the GDP expectation. In this chart, you can see that we have the yellow line is the GDP, and you can see that the growth is slightly increasing. But this trend is stemming from the consumption that they don't grow a lot, and it depends also in the fluctuation of the investment. You can see the trend, the inversion of trend in 2013, 2014, where the investment change trend from a decreasing phase to an increasing phase. And so this will explain as we will see, the more efficiency of investment in the GDP. Trade internationalization is always growing, and in some period with relevant fluctuation of net export. But the trade openings, export plus import divided GDP, is growing year by year. This is a signal of competitive, because when you are competitive at international level, you export, but also the export tend to foster GDP and then to increase also the import of goods and services. The export by sector show us that our system is internationalized for each sector. From 2008 to 2021, the increase of total export of Veneto region was by 40%, 40.6%. But the agribusiness doubled the level, 104%. Machinery 28%, fashion system 36%, home system 36.5%. Chemistry 69.6%. So all sectors aim at an increase in trade internationalization. Veneto region is an open region, and you can see the difference between the openness level between Veneto region and Italy. There is a difference by 50% higher from Italy. Veneto region has a growing and 50% higher than Italy level of openness. In this chart, you can see in the green line that is stable, and the green line is the share of investment on GDP. So during the last 20 years, the share is stable and tend to reduce slightly in the last year. Instead, the yellow line, you can see the level of ICOR, that it is explain the efficiency, the incremental capital output ratio, and explain the efficiency of investment. When in the you can see a lot of fluctuation. And there is, in the last year, above all after 2016, 2017, a high level of efficiency of the investment on GDP. It means that it has been something that changed the efficiency in Veneto region that before acted as negative efficiency, like in 2013, in 2018, in 2008, and in 2002, where we can see negative effect of investment efficiency. But we can observe also that efficiency show a cyclical dynamic by 5-6 years. Every 5-6 years, the efficiency change its trend. So we can verify the first proposition by observing the ICOR level, that for Veneto region between 2010-2019, the last 10 years, the level is 80.6. In Italy, the level is 399. So the efficiency of investment in Veneto region is higher, far, very high, and higher than the efficiency in Italy. An average between the two different periods. In the first period, the efficiency was negative and was even more lower than Italy in the first period between 2010, 2014. But in the last 5 years, there has been a recovery of efficiency, and the efficiency became 16.8, a very good value. And so the first proposition is verified. Veneto region has an efficiency of investment quite higher than the efficiency of Italy. But the question is why ICOR of Veneto is higher than the one of Italy. We say the competitive advantage of the so-called third way of development. Third way of development is the northeast way, because it's different from state way and large company way of development. Veneto region is a stronger innovator. A regional innovation scoreboard defines Veneto region as a strong innovator. Has an economy entrepreneurial oriented, many firms that work together, industrial district, cluster, network of firms. There is a very skillful workforce and highly professional too. There is a high level of internationalization and a high skill and customized products and services, as told before Dominick Salvatore. We can say that in Veneto region there is a good quality of life and a high level of living standard, high level of creativity. We design, creativity, prototyping, high level of cluster presence, excellent, this is important, institutional and educational system. In Veneto region we have a good educational system. And also a good accessibility. Consider that the Venice-Treviso airport system is the third hub in Italy after Rome, Fiumicino, and Milan Malpensa. So this is the main factors that Veneto region use in order to foster its development. So we can see that the role of internationalization after pandemic shock. The first thing is we have often read the word never been is so high, but never been so high is referred to complexity. Complexity is the paradigm of our life and our way of working today. Complexity is not an abstract term. It is made by 6 different dimensions: uncertainty, rapidity, discontinuity, multidimensionality, entropy, and multiplicity. It's simple and easier to think that these dimensions never been so high as today. And in particular, I want to point out the role of discontinuity, because this is very different comparing to the past. In the past, the change were transformation, evolution. Today, the change is a discontinuity, is like a metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is not an evolution, but a sudden change of shape. It's like COVID. COVID is not an evolution. It's a black swan. It's a sudden problem that we had to face, and we were not ready. We were unprepared to face that pandemic, that black swan. So complexity we are facing now is made by 2 kinds of complexity. There is bad complexity to reduce. We have to reduce bad complexity. Bad complexity, for example, is the excess of bureaucracy. As told before, 10 pages in Italy we have to fill, no? Dominick told us. But there is a good complexity that we have to feed, continuously feed. And one kind of a good complexity is internationalization. Complexity is like an ecosystem. If you reduce the complexity of ecosystem, the ecosystem dies. So we need to feed a good kind of complexity. And one way to do this is to internationalize our system, our way of work, our thinking. And so the internationalization is a good thing, and there is a payoff of openness. Just to make some example, the productivity index is very higher for companies that are internationalized than different companies that are not. For example, the index for non-exporting companies is 44. Instead, the company exporting or foreign controlled company have an index by 82 or 104, very high, a lot of higher than the index of non-exporting company. In the long term model, an increase of 1% of point in the ratio of GDP trade to GDP raises the income per capita by 0.4. So the elasticity is positive, and it means that the GDP growth is sensitive to the growth of trade internationalization. Average size of enterprise, 40 employees for exporting companies, non-exporting companies, 8 employees. A very lower number of 3% of foreign controlled enterprise account for 13% of employees and 20% of value added and 32% of total export. 24% of high export propensity companies account for 72% of total export. And 32% of exporting companies accounts for 70% of employees and 81% of the value added. Consider that we have some sector in Italy like goldsmith cluster that has a turnover of 80% that is foreign turnover, 80%. So the foreign markets are very crucial for the growth of our territory. And so the second proposition is verified. The internationalization help us to face pandemic and the black zone and green zone. So, but the payoff of openness is also at system level, because we can differentiate two terms: resilience and anti-fragility. Resilience is typical of a domestic company, because when you are resilient, you tend to resist to exogenous shock and to want to return to the original situation. When you are anti-fragile, like international company, you are more responsive to the pandemic shocks, and you do this by accelerating the digital transition, the changing and the sourcing channels of your firm, and above all, by designing a new business model. So you are proactive. You tend to thrive in complexity and when you are open to the international market. So we want a new internationalization path for the future. Particularly, we want to develop a sustainable and digital together, sustainable and digital for internationalization. Because we have also two kinds of internationalization: old internationalization, new internationalization. The old internationalization was focused on growth, was focused at firm level, was with diffuse cost, but concentrate benefit on several firms, often big firms, large firms. The new internationalization must be at system level, not only at firm level, also at institutional, including institutional and firms together. So to be internationalized have to be the territory, the environment, not only one firm. And if you have diffuse cost, we have to have, again, diffuse benefits. And above all, the new internationalization process have to be focused on development and sustainability, different from growth, is more sustainable on the territory. So, in order to go to the new kind of internationalization, what is important? At local level, the important is stemming from institutional environment. If you consider that the process of internationalization is made by three main parts, three main phases. The first is the extension, the phase of extension. The second phase is the penetration, and the third phase is the integration. In this path, from top left to lower right, you can see that the role of institution is different. At the beginning, the main role is for local institution. At the end, the main role is for global institution. And this means to transit from my way of internationalization to our way of internationalization, more sustainable, more attention to the payoff of, collectively for the environment. And what do we know about a more sustainable internationalization? What are the successful factors of lesson learned? In the phase of extension, it's important the knowledge of international market. It's important to have a business skill, important international orientation, organization, and management skill. In the second phase, the penetration phase, is important a strong sustainability orientation. This is very crucial. And a global mindset at the management and company level. And then we can't have a penetration at the international level if we don't have innovation of product mainly, because also in Italy we have a good system of process innovation, but now it's important to change the products continuously change our products. And in the last phase, the integration phase, we need to foster even more product innovation, and to base our phase on human capital and social capital together, human capital and social capital. So, what is the role of digitalization? Digitalization is an accelerator that speed the level and the level of internationalization. Digital internationalization is like a metaverse. It is like augment the internationalization process. Is an enabler that allow higher speed of internationalization and allow SMEs to enter international market. Today we can't think about the internationalization without thinking sustainable and digital. So we have to face the famous internationalization dilemma. On the one hand, there is that say think global, act local, because the goal is to change local. No, On the other hand, there is who think local and act global. The objective is to change the global. But in the new way of internationalization, we should think sustainable and digital and act local. And the goal, what is? To respect the planet. This is our way, new way of internationalization. I'm very happy to remind the word of Dominick Salvatore when he said, of course, the rate of growth of development depends not only on globalization, but also on many other domestic factors, like political stability, like improvement in education and labor skill, but also increasing in the rate of investment and the very important absorption of new technologies. But globalization is centrally, Dominick said, certainly a crucial ingredient for growth. A crucial ingredient, not the only one, but crucial. So, to summarize, we can say internationalization, not everything, but never without. Not everything, but never without. And so, what we expect for the future? We expect that the new internationalization will have to help us thrive in complexity. Thank you for your attention.
Very good.